Welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast, featuring advice and interviews about athlete branding. Learn how marketing, public relations, and broadcasting can grow your brand. We also have special episodes to talk about recent news, events, and anything in the world of sports. The podcast is sponsored by Pliable, a versatile marketing, PR, and broadcasting company that identifies opportunities and creates tailored content for its clients. Now it's time to roll. Here's your host, Glynn.
Thanks, and welcome to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about building your brand and what that takes to get to the next level. We are joined today by Stephen Seidel. He is going to be talking with us about personal branding. He is a founder of the award-winning PR firm, the Seidel Agency, for amplifying artists and Fortune 500 changemakers. He's a best-selling author, the creator of the top 10 Apple podcasts, Wolves Among Us. He's the co-founder of the men's mental health community. Also, he's got these cool Gents Journey cards we're going to talk about today. Oh, there's so much to unpack with you, Steve. Welcome to the broadcast.
Reg, thank you so much. It's an honor to be on here. I really love what you're doing because I'm a big fan of sports, having grown up in Philadelphia. I'm a Philly fan through and through, and I really understand the value of team and really bringing people together. So I appreciate what you're doing for the athletes, and it's an honor to be here on the show. Thank you again.
Yeah, absolutely. And congrats to your world champs.
Yeah, I was there at the Super Bowl. We didn't have a good, I don't know when this airs, but I was at the Super Bowl. It was quite, and that's part of what I want to talk about on the show.
Yeah.
Is I worked at a previous company. I met a gal who ultimately, she worked in television for NBC. And she knew that I was a Philadelphia Eagles super fan. We connected, and to me, it's all about connection as currency and really connecting to your teammates, to your coworkers, to anyone who you're working with or in and around your community. She knew I was a super fan. She came to me and said, "Hey, I'm up for this job. I used to work for NBC. Her name's Jen Kavanaugh, and she worked a lot in entertainment. But running a sports franchise is very similar, in my opinion." And I was like, "You know what? You're 100% correct." She ultimately got the job. She's become a lifelong friend, and if I need a ticket to a game, I usually give her a call. So it worked out for the Super Bowl.
Well, I like what you say about connections or currencies. So I want to kind of start there with what we're talking about today, which is building your brand. A lot of people like to jump into the money part, right? When we talk about NIL, they're like, "Oh, how can I get rich quick?" Or, what deals can I scoop up? And one of the things I always emphasize is that you've got to build your network. Your network is your net worth. I use that a lot. McKenna Haas, founder of CIV, told that to me, and I really resonated with me because really at the end of the day, in order to build a brand, you need to have people that understand what you stand for. And I think that it can start at such a young age that athletes don't even realize. And I even sometimes have to rewind with them and say, think about some coaches that you've had in the past. Think about some teachers you've had in the past. Think about some teammates that you built great relationships with. That's going to be your network. So don't just look at them on your team right now as, hey, these are going to be great friends for life. Look at them as you said, connections that could connect dots to other people, other opportunities. And that's such a valuable lesson for them to learn as soon as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I work a lot with athletes as well. I worked with Brandon Short. He was a former Penn State player. I went to Penn State. He was running for the Penn State Alumni Board, and we worked long and hard about how to redefine his message and how that he can connect with both his community, like you're talking about, previous players, previous coaches, previous friends, and growing up in high school. And so part of the process that we work through is I have a 4-part process. I try to keep it real simple. Story, at the end of the day, where I come from, connection is currency. Story is the connective tissue, and really understanding what your story is, because that can create emotions, and that allows people to have feelings. And when they feel for you and they can connect with you, then they can obviously confide in you, and you can grow from there. So understanding the story that we once told ourselves, or the limiting stories and the limiting beliefs, and understanding how you're overcoming them. But as you do that, who are the key people, like you mentioned, the coaches, teammates, other adversaries, allies that helped you overcome that, to get over some of these mental barriers. But what we do when we're really building forward from a brand perspective is I like to start with your mission, and then we move into your message, And then lastly, we move into your media or community. And then ultimately, we want to build a movement. And so when we start with your mission, we really want to take time and to dive deeper into who you are. What are your highest commitments? What are you ultimately so passionate about that you can't stop thinking about it, or you stay up all
Hmm.
night long because it's something that just really rings true? And it can be related to sports, yes, but you are a person. So you have, things that are physical, you things that are intellectual, behavioral, mental. So making sure that you honor those aspects of who you are, all areas of life, your children. Maybe you have pets that you stand for, and you're a vegetarian, you're against, you're a PETA advocate. So really understanding what your highest commitments are. We fine tune that mission. And then once we understand that mission, we want to step into your message so we can get super clear about what your message is. And it could be something as simple as, I help business owners achieve their dreams, which is what I like to do when working with clients. But then getting very clear about that message. And then lastly, understanding that media or that community aspect. Too often people are like, oh, I'm going to put all these things out here. I want to get brand deals. I want to get shoot. But really understanding who you are, then you can work from mission, message, and then your media. And then ultimately, when you have something that you stand for, you can build momentum. And you look at Taylor Swift, you look at Beyonce, you look
Yeah.
at a lot of these other athletes that are really doing it. Kevin Durant is kind of building his own thing as well. So
Well,
these athletes have things that they stand for. So that can help you move. And then when people watch you on TV, they click on your social media or they buy a shirt or some of your merch, they're actually voting with their choice. They're voting with their dollar. They're voting with their clicks. They're voting with their time. So you give them something in return so that you create that win, win, win. And for that win, 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 it's going to be the community, it's going to be the customer, and then it's also going to be, you as a corporation or as a brand.
yeah, absolutely. I think the one that comes to my mind that's probably one of the best stories that I have about what you're talking about is Hannah and Emma, who were two softball players at Ball State. And literally, they came to me and I met them through a connection.
Yeah.
He had told me that they wanted to cure childhood cancer and they weren't interested in NIL deals. You know what I mean? They literally wanted to brand themselves around the efforts that they were, taking to try and cure cancer. And we ended up creating these cleats that had hashtag cure cancer on them. And to your point, they were involved in their community. They created a movement. It led to a lot of media, led even now to a book that I wrote with my daughter about it because they were so passionate about something outside of sport as well, which is, something we have talked about here a little bit is bringing that to light as to who you are as a person. And there are so many athletes with so many stories and so many passions that I really feel we can bring those out. So kudos to Hannah and Emma for what they've done. It's an amazing story. If you look up even hashtag cure cancer, you'll be able to see some of their work. But I think that, again, it gets back to connections because that conversation literally with Hannah and Emma never even happens without that connection that I had of somebody telling me that these are two girls that I would probably want to work with. So let's talk a little bit more now about some of the things that you've done in your career. Obviously involved in a lot of different things. You help
Sure.
businesses now. You're involved in men's mental health. And then even talk to me a little bit about what you've got going on as far as this Gents Journey deck of cards too.
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. So as a child, I'm going to go back to my story. My parents divorced when I was one. And my dream in life was always to become a great father because my father wasn't often around. And often we see this in sports, right? If your dad is either there or my dad would come to the baseball games. And so I really gravitated for sports because I wanted to make him proud. And so like when he came to the sports diamond or baseball, I was like, oh, my dad, I very rarely got to see him because he was traveling. I was like, oh, I want to make him proud. But ultimately my dream became to be a great father, to empower, future generations, to empower the vulnerable child within us all, because oftentimes we feel like we're not enough. And so that became the crux of what I do at my company. My mission is to do good, give back, and make an impact. And we start with, who you are, what ultimately you want to do. And then we dive deeper into connection to our calling, connection to our community, connection to our customers. And one of the things for me, as I grew older, I had my own children. I recently lost my father about 5 years ago, which we rebonded later in life, and then I lost my mom, and my mom was the one who was always there, and it was probably the most challenging moment in my life. I had relocated my business. It's a virtual business. We're a virtual PR media firm from California to Kentucky. We had a newborn. It was a pandemic. I was running my business out of my house, and then my mom got cancer. And so I had to bring her into my household. She took over my extra bedroom. And so I had to run my business out of my laundry room. And you talk about, connection. I really had to go deep and connect as much as I could because everyone was relying on me. And if I didn't connect to myself and love myself, then I didn't have enough to give to everyone around me. And oftentimes as an athlete too, sometimes we spread ourselves too thin, but we have to make sure that we empower ourselves, we love ourselves, and we're positive and we support ourselves, whether it's affirmations, motivations. But this was a tough moment. My mom ultimately passed, and I knew I needed a support system. I was in a new town. I had no friends. I was running a
Yeah.
virtual business, so all my other employees weren't there. Had lost both my parents, and my marriage was close to. It was tough because my mom moved in, and I'm trying to caretake for my mom and my little baby, and it was tough. So, anyways, I decided I need something to support. And that's where, if you're in a team environment, you have your team, but I needed to create my team. So I reached out to my growth friends and I decided, okay, I need to find some entrepreneurial friends because they're going to have flexible time. I know that they're comfortable with being uncomfortable and taking risks. And at the same time, also know that they're going to find ways that we can, game the system, if you will, or find different ways that we can, hack things. And so I started creating weekly meetings on Mondays. We created Gents Journey, and I finally found a safe place to share. One guy was going through bankruptcy. Another guy, was having challenges with being sued over litigation. For me, I had lost my mother. So we all had really, really tough things we're going through. And we needed a place to share this. And so I created Gents Journey. We all came together. And what essentially we did, I talk about this in my TEDx talk. That grief in that moment actually was an opportunity for me to reassess and to understand that there is a power in that grief. What we go through, we grow through, and that resilience is going to make us stronger. And so I brought it to a 3-step process to reconnect, to rebuild. I had to rebuild my relationships or rebuild my community, much like in a team environment. We need to figure out who are the coaches, who are the players that are going to take me where I need to be, because we're a product of the 5 closest people. And then lastly, I had to reclaim my power and reclaim that story, because my brain was telling me I'm not good enough. I have nothing left, but this was just a recalibration moment. And so we created Gents Journey, and the product that we created, because we had so many meetings, we wanted to help other men. We recognized there was a need. There was not a lot of tools for men, and a lot of your athletes are female. I'm sure they're male as well. This product is good for both of them, but we noticed specifically for men. You go into Barnes and Noble, there's books for, expectant mothers.
Yeah.
There's pamphlets. There's all sorts of, there's like 1 or 2 books for the
Well,
expectant
and you
fathers.
throw in the fact, Steve, that let's be honest here, guys don't typically talk about their feelings very often. I mean, that's another
Sure.
thing, right? It's like you talked about being uncomfortable. That's something I think that you may have discovered when you were in that moment, and that's important. So I'm
Yeah.
loving this idea.
And so you see Kevin Love and some of these other individuals that are able to speak out about the way that they feel and certain things that it's become a lot more acceptable now than
Yes.
when our fathers were being raised. Our fathers were the boomer generation. But as a father now, we understood that we needed to be present. We needed to be available. We needed to, so we created the 7 pillars of manhood. And so it's friendship, family, focus, freedom, faith, fitness, and fun. And so these are all areas where we want to be a fully functional man. And then we created the Gents Journey card deck because we felt like people weren't really opening up, especially during the pandemic. We became very connected to our devices, but disconnected to our feelings and our thoughts and our beliefs. And so what this is this is a simple card deck that has a question that came out of our meetings. We've been in existence for 5 years now, 150 plus meetings, and we distilled it down to 50 questions that kept arising that could easily connect you to the person that you're looking face to face, eye to eye, heart to heart. And so oftentimes we get in our head, especially as athletes, but we want to get out of our head and get into our heart and really stand for what we believe in. So this card deck has 52 cards. I'm a big fan of magic. It's like a magic
Yeah,
trick.
I was gonna say, yeah.
But the magic is in your story and the answer that you share. So I'm going to shuffle through these, and I would like for you to answer one of the questions, Greg.
Okay, let's see what we got.
Okay, tell me one.
Yeah. Now.
Okay. This one is, how do you foster relationships with friends and family?
Interesting. Good one.
So,
Um,
and then like there's other ones, what brings
yeah,
you
what brings you
peace?
peace? Yeah.
There's what are three
Three
things
things
we're
you're
grateful
grateful for.
for? So you could pick any of those.
Yeah, well, I like the ones you had here with the foster. Read me the question one more time. Foster
How do you
relationships.
foster relationships with friends and family? And to go back to connection, this is what we're building in that men's group. And oftentimes when you're in a team, you don't realize it, but you have this connection. You just need to open up and share. And by sharing your story, then you can go deeper and really understand who they are and what they stand for. And so 10 years down the line, they can tell you about Hannah because they know who you are and what you're
Right.
passionate about.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, I mean, I think when I think about that question, I think it's great for this topic, which is I really try to see people, especially when it's friends or family you haven't seen in years, being able to see them. I think that's so important. I think we lost a little bit of that, obviously, during the pandemic, and we realized, hopefully, how important in-person connections and relationships are. It's one of the reasons why every year, or at least every 2 years, I try to go see one of the athletes I work with, or we will fly out to go see family, or family will come here, because I think it's so important to see people in person and then have deeper conversations than you can kind of have on the phone of, hey, how you doing, right? Like there's a deeper meaning when you actually can sit down, have conversations. That's why people have coffee, have dinner, to be able to really dive deeper. And then I also think one of the ways that I foster relationships is finding people that are as passionate about things that I am. Building community of people that I enjoy hanging out with, so that it's not, oh, I have to go hang out with these people, right? Like you should want to go hang out with every person that you have a meaningful relationship with. And if not, honestly, I surround myself with positivity. So I'm trying to surround myself with positive people, because
Yeah.
that's what I know is going to help, make better relationships, create more opportunities for everyone. And at the end of the day, strengthen relationships too. So,
Yeah, I love that. And that's one thing we're seeing a growing trend in the IRL in real life and visiting people, and kind of putting your cell phone and really being present. You feel that energy, you feel that frequency. You can look them eye to eye. You can give them a hug. I mean, just
yeah,
giving somebody a hug is so powerful. And if you're not able to do that, we talk a lot about on our men's group is we have the technology to FaceTime someone. Why
yeah.
would you not call them up and look them in the eyes and be able to experience, I know it's a Zoom call, but versus text messages where communication can get lost,
Lost.
it's
I
just
see it
sort
all
of
the time, Steve. I see it all the
it's
time with the way these
it's
kids text now. It's like unbelievable.
can't even understand half the things that they're saying, and so
Yeah.
but
Well,
for
the other thing I'll go and I'll kind of follow up that too is the fostering of the relationships and even the starting of a relationship is now, to your point, I always want to meet with somebody on Zoom. Like if I can and I can make it happen and they can make it happen, that's just the
sure.
way to go, because I know I can find a better connection with that person and see their emotions on their face when I say something or want to do something or have an idea. It just makes the communication and the connection, I feel like, that much stronger.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And one of the things that we talk a lot about with our clients, or that just a simple connection through a story or whatever, is also looking to go from good to great. So obviously my mission is to do good, give back, and make an impact, and have a positive impact. But what we look for when we foster relationships, me personally, professionally, is I want them to be great. And great for me is I'm a huge acronym nerd, means grateful. I want to see that they're grateful for the actions and the time that's being spent, even for what they're given in this world. We don't have to go to work. We get to go to work. We want them to be reflective and have an understanding of what we're going through, and take a moment to really take it all in and not be so busy so much, to be empathetic and to have empathy for others in your team, in your circle, to be accountable, to say what you do what you say. I come from Philly, and man, you're only as good as your word. And we're an underdog place, so we say what we're gonna do, we do what we're gonna say. So under promise, over deliver. That's my
Yeah.
strategy. Lastly, is we want to be transformational, and that's where we want to really find ways that we could shift, mentally, physically, emotionally. And so I struggled with it when I moved here. When I talked about the low moment,
Yeah.
I was looking for happiness. And then I'm actually in I'm in a group. It's run by Pat Croce. I don't know if you know him. He's the former owner of the Philadelphia Sixers. He was actually the gentleman who
Yeah.
drafted Allen Iverson. And so when the Sixers were in the 2001 run for the World Series, Larry Boa was the coach, Allen Iverson was a player, and they were going head to head because Allen Iverson had a huge ego. Larry Boa was all about back to the basics. Pat Croce was the owner, and he had to bring them into a conference room and get them to connect and be on the same page, and it worked. But now he's sort of transitioned, if you will. He's more into living in the present moment. He has a weekly meditation group, and in that group, when my mom was sick, I put her in that, and that really helped her from a mental perspective. All these individual tools, like a 6 second sacred pause, he talks a lot about, so that instead of reacting, you can respond and come from a place of truth, where you're not gonna. We have 3 word mantras. We have all sorts of different things that we do in that group so that we can remain present in the moment and really honor ourselves, get rid of our ego, act without expectations, replace judgment with curiosity. Tons of tools. But the most important one that I'm talking about is I was actually going for happiness when I moved here. I said, look, I have no friends, I have no activities. I was in that group with Pat and everyone, and they said, well, look, you need to come from happiness. And then I came back to sports again because I grew up playing so many sports. I hadn't done a lot of sports since I moved here because I was focusing on taking care of my mom and my children and my business. But they said, go out and find that sense of play. And that was crucial because if it's fun, it gets done. I went
I
and
was
played
gonna say that's
tennis.
that fun piece. That's that fun piece we
That
talked
fun
about
piece,
earlier.
man.
Yeah.
If it's fun, it gets done. I played tennis and boom, it unlocked it. And so I was coming from happiness of the tennis. And then naturally people gravitate towards you and your energy instead of for happiness. And so that's where, as an athlete, obviously you're playing, but find these other things where you're coming from happiness that you can surround yourself as you build your brand.
Wow, yeah, that is really powerful because I feel like the same way when you're doing things that make you happy, everything gets a little bit easier, for sure. So, all right, let's talk a little bit about the TED Talks that you do and how you're sharing your messaging and your mission with others.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I focus on is I spoke a lot about my dream as a young child is to, be the best father that I can. And so I focus a lot on mentorship. And so especially in sports, as a lot of these players come through, I went to Penn State, so I'm part of the Penn State LinkedIn network. One of my other clients is a gentleman by the name of Darren Spicer. He was working in a specific field. It was aesthetic medicine, and he had a love for coffee. And so we've been with him since store number 1. He created a company called Clutch Coffee Bar. They're up to 20 locations. And every time they open a new locations, we get the PR, press, presence. But he works as a mentor at Oregon, which
Oh,
Penn State and Oregon are now
yeah.
rivals because we're in the Big Ten. They actually beat us a couple weeks back, but he works a lot with their team. And so I help him and a lot of his athletes with what they're doing. And so part of my core initiative is speaking to these athletes and making sure that they find a solid foundation within themselves. I talk about those 4 core principles, but also just believing in yourself. And oftentimes, your disadvantage can become your advantage. As a young child, I had a hard time hearing. And so I had tubes put in my ears a lot of times, and I was I didn't think it really impacted me much, but they thought that I wasn't paying attention. And even now, I have hearing aids that I wear. And so now I use it as an opportunity to really lean into that, to share my story, to be vulnerable, and to let people know that oftentimes we're giving something that we may seem as a disadvantage, but if we can find ways to overcome it, it just shows us that resilience. We talk a lot about grit, growth, resilience, integrity, and trust. If we can use that grit, and once you overcome that, it gives you that momentum so that you can fail forward. We're going to fail, but when we fail forward, we're continuing to move forward. And when we take that first step, we can start action and we can build that momentum. So when I talk to these youngsters, whether it's Youth Business Alliance, Penn Staters, Oregon athletes, we talk a lot about these tools and simply failing forward. And then in my TEDx talk, it was about the hidden power of grief and how we're going to lose things in life, right?
Yep. Yep.
We've been taught to attach ourselves, and that's part of the work that I do in this Meditation Hill Sangha is the moment we can release some of these attachments and these expectations, the more freer we will be in life. But at the end of the day, we're going to lose a job, we're going to lose a friend, we're going to lose, our favorite stuffy. And that attachment that we have, we're going to lose that as well. But when we understand that it all comes back to love and being present and sharing that love in that moment and not coming from a place of fear, false evidence appearing as real, if we can live in that place of love, then we can understand that the love is never lost. My daughter often says love never ends. But in my TEDx talk, I do a quote from Rumi: goodbyes are only for those who love with their eyes, because for those who love with their heart and soul, there is no such thing as separation. So we may lose something. That's just simply a moment for us to come back, to take a breath and realize that we are surrounded with love. It never goes anywhere. It's always with us. It's one of the finite resources. It's creativity too. Just because you do more of it, it actually builds more of it. But we often feel if we give it away that, we're less than, or we're lacking that, but it's actually going to continue to compound in interest. So the more love we can give away, the more creative, and the more that we can connect, the better off we'll be.
Good stuff. Really appreciate you diving in deep on this here today, Steve, because there's clearly a lot of things that you've discovered that I think others can certainly benefit from. And as we've talked about, this is all part of building that brand, whether it's a personal brand, whether it's your athlete brand, and obviously working with athletes like we do, we know that gives them a leg up. They've had opportunities to be able to build their brand in a different way than anybody else, and have experiences that other people probably haven't had in their lifetime. So all really good things, Steve. If people want more information, I got to get myself a pack of those cards from the Gents Journey. How can people get in touch with you and order the cards or get more information?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking. So you can go to stephenseidel.com. So that's STEPHEN. Seidel is SEIDEL.com. And /media, if you go to stephenseidel.com/media, I have a really cool free giveaway for you. It's 4 free platforms where you can build your own brand. And so as you're building your brand, there's journalists that are seeking experts in what it is. And so that's when it goes back to you being an expert, as an athlete, but there's other areas that maybe you could share insights towards. So if you go to stephenseidel.com, you can see my links for Gents Journey, my agency's on there, but stephenseidel.com/media is a free giveaway, 4 platforms where you can get free PR press around what it is that you do. And then that way you can begin building your brand and getting on stages and publications and placement across the board. So, and I'm on social media at Stephen Seidel, same spelling.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that is awesome. And I am so grateful we connected.
And I'd love to leave one. Can I leave one last question from my card deck?
Yeah, please. Yeah.
And for the listeners or anybody watching, what I would encourage you to do is whatever the answer to this question is, I would like for you to share it with one person, because too often we wait till it's too late to share it. Like I lost my mom and father. Like tell them that you love them. Don't like wait. Greg was saying, go see them. Don't wait. Don't miss that opportunity. So keep up those friendships, keep up those relationships, and keep connecting, because it will really serve you long term. But I'm going to give one more question, and then I would love for you to share this with a friend if you're listening, and text them or give them a video. So tell me when to stop, Greg. You can choose the last one.
Yeah. All right. Stop.
So this is a great one. What did you want to be when you grew up? So whatever you wanted to be, there's a really great book from Julia Cameron. It's called The Artist's Way, and it's the spiritual guide to higher creativity. She talks about remembering what you wanted to be when you grew up, and for 5 different things, and injecting them in your daily life, and you'll find more happiness. And this all go back to your mission and your purpose. But I urge your listeners and your viewers, what did you want to be when you grew up? Share that with your mom, dad, friend, or maybe somebody in that field, and inject that in your daily life. I'm sure it'll help you be happier. Yeah.
Well, it makes you also reflect too, for sure, how things have changed, right? Yeah. Very cool. Well, I appreciate it, Steve. Congrats on all your success. Thank you for being part of the podcast, and keep up the great work.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right. I'm Greg Glynn. We're glad you could tune in, and stay pliable, my friends.
Thanks for listening to the Athlete Brand Advisor Podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes from today's episode and catch up on recent episodes at pliablemarketing.com. We also encourage you to share topics and guest ideas by emailing our production staff at pliablemarketing@gmail.com. We love hearing from our loyal listeners and athletes who want to grow their brand. So jump in and be part of the podcast, because that's how we roll.